there is no difference. Behaviorism you can think of as a kind of functionalism. Yeah? You've got you have some state that is making you behave in a certain way in response to certain inputs. Yeah. Okay. I'll come on to the difference in a second, but yeah.
So you can be grumpy and not react.
You can be grumpy and not react.
Not produce that behavior.
And not produce that behavior. Is that right? Sorry? I could be a super Spartan about grumpiness. I'm sorry. That's wonderful. They've been bred for generations and generations never to show the least sign of being grumpy. And so now they never have any inclination even to react badly when someone... This is a great example. I wish I'd thought of that. Next year's class will get that example. So for generations and generations, they've been bred not to be grumpy, so that now, when the things that would usually make us grumpy happen to them, they don't have the slightest tendency to react badly. Is that right? That would be the idea? Yeah. Okay, what's the difference between that and a scenario where grumpiness has just been bred out of them? I mean, that's what you're describing, really. You're not describing a situation in which there's grumpiness there. There's no vestige of grumpiness in these people. Yeah? You really just rigorously described a case in which grumpiness has been systematically flushed out of them, and not a trace of it remains. Yeah? There is no more to the grumpiness than those functional connections. What would be the difference between a super Spartan who was grumpy and one who wasn't? No difference at all. Isn't that right? Put up your hand if you think that sounds completely right. I'm completely knocked out by that. Put up your hand if you think I have no idea what you're talking about at the moment. Okay. And if you think you disagree, you can make sense of super Spartans about grumpiness. Okay, would you like to...
I have a question.
Yep.
I feel like there's a difference between grumpiness being bred out of you and you actually being grumpy, but faking that you're not.
Yeah.
If I was actually something pissed me off and I was upset about it and I but still had to fake a smile and be happy.
That's right.
I'm still internally grumpy even though I'm not displaying that characteristic. So I guess that's where I don't understand.
The state you're describing of faking it, that makes perfect sense. All I'd say about that is, we well know, that is a complex state, right? If you get pushed too far in that state, you might explode much worse than you would have if you haven't been faking it. And in general, the sheer mental pressure of faking it might mean that you can't do long division the way you usually can, or you don't drive so good. You see what I mean? If you're in a car and faking it, you really might go off the bridge under the pressure of the situation. Yeah, it will show up in other ways. Yeah, but these super Spartans have got none of that. They don't need to fake it. They don't have the slightest impulse to engage in the behavior. So why would they fake it? Yeah, yeah.
So you're basically saying that because they're not, grumpiness is only seen by how you interact with other people.
Exactly.
But my question is then, say that I'm feeling grumpy, but you lock me in a closet. Well, when I'm sitting, not interacting with anyone, but in my head, do I think that I'm grumpy or am I not grumpy because I can't show it? Because I think that you would still feel grumpy even if you're by yourself. You just have a grumpy outlook on life.
You can try this at home. I think you're right. I mean, I would feel even more grumpy if I was in the closet, right? But if you think about what is going on there, your potential for interacting with other people is very different than it would be if you weren't grumpy. Yeah? I mean, anyone with any sense is not going to let you be the one who lets you out of the closet. You see what I mean? Because they know what the upshot will be. In fact, the way you're the way you're poised to interact with other people might be the very reason you got put into the cupboard in the first place, right? If you're particularly grumpy, yeah. I'm just hypothesizing.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's like a science condition.
Yeah. That's right. Well, I mean, what's right and good about your example is that there's no real interaction with other people going on here. Yeah, that is absolutely right. But look, if you just think about what you need to interact with other people, if we didn't have terms that told us how other people were likely to behave in a whole bunch of different scenarios, we would want to have them. If you want to know whether to ask your boss for a raise, you want to know something about how they're likely to react when you do that. Yeah? If you want to know, is this a good time to give your friend bad news, you want to know something about how they're likely to react when you do that. We need words that tell us what the inputs and output, what output we're likely to get for any given input with a particular person. This is part of being a social creature. Just as if you're going to interact with an electrical system, you need some concept of things like switches and lamps so that you can know how the circuits are organized. Doesn't that make sense? If we didn't have functional terms for interacting with other people socially, we would need to invent them. But the idea is that's what psychological terms are. That's what all these words for mental states are. We are very, very complex. Grumpy is just the tip of the iceberg in how complex we are. We have these rich internal structures, but they're all just defined as internal structures. Yep?
So if, like, say a baby was raised for its entire life in solitary confinement,
Yeah.
would that person have no mental states since they have no social interaction?
No, if you're thinking that would be the wrong answer, then I just agree. But if they didn't have any concept of how to interact with other people, then they wouldn't have mental state. Then they wouldn't have the concept of mental states. Yep. An animal can exist on its own without. It might not be a social animal. It might never meaningfully interact with other animals, but still have a lot of psychological states. It just doesn't think about them. Yeah. If you or I or your person raised in solitude are going to think about psychological states, they have to be thinking about potential interactions. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yep.
So when you're talking about the social inputs and outputs, like asking your boss for a raise or like telling your friends, like picking a good time to tell your friends
Yeah.
bad news, is it the fact that we can kind of guess their outputs? Wouldn't that be because we have an imaginative kind of understanding of them and like where they are at that certain point and what they're doing and
That's right.
when would be the best time of the day to tell them because we can kind of understand their situation and how they'll react, not just like something without thought, just like a machine working this way.
That's great. That is true and insightful. That's exactly how we do know about other people, by getting an imaginative understanding of them. But it's one thing just to have the imaginative understanding of another person, and another thing to be able to say what kind of state they're in. You see what I mean? You get people like that who are not that articulate, but just very good around people. They will say to you, don't talk to him right now, do it later. And if you ask why, they just say, no, do it later. You see what I mean? And what I'm talking about is being able to say what's going on with this person. That's when you're actually using the psychological concepts and using the functional notions. And what you're doing when you're imagining them on this functionalist approach is getting an intuitive understanding of what kind of functional state they're in, how they're likely to respond to any particular stimulus. And then articulating that is a matter of using the symbols, as you might use a switch symbol or somebody might be you could get an electrician who's very good at actually interacting with the machinery in a room, but not that great at articulating what it all is. Yeah. But nonetheless, what they're doing when they articulate what's going on here is they're describing the thing functionally.
So maybe when you're trying to
Exactly. That whole complex in there from their past context, their current functional structure, and what the response in there is going to be to your input. Yeah.
So basically, it's kind of a combination of like imaginative understanding and just like knowing A plus B equals whatever.
Yeah. What I was suggesting was you're getting that A plus B knowledge from your imaginative understanding. That's the basis. It's because you have the imaginative understanding that you can do that. Yeah. And that is the reason I say that's insightful is it's something deep that is special about the case of the mind. I mean, an electrician looking at a wiring system can interact with it perfectly well, but it's not like the electrician has to become one with the electrical system or get some imaginative understanding of the electrical system from the inside. You see what I mean? There is something really interesting and important about the role that imagination plays here. Yeah. Yep. So is that it? Are we all happy now with what functionalism is? Put up your hand if you think I still just don't get it what functionalism is. Put up your hand if you get it. If you don't get it, what it means to be functionalist about a notion like grumpy. Put up your hand if you're happy. Okay, 1, 2. Okay, put up your hand if you get it, what it means to be functionalist about a notion like grumpy. Boy, okay. Yes?
Do functionalists allow for like variations of grumpiness? Like
Yes, of course.
okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yeah. Those will be variations in what kind of outputs you get for any one given input. Yeah. Yep. Oh, sorry, I was just asking you. Do you want to pursue that? Oh, okay. Okay, I'm not quite sure how to proceed here. Let's. Well, I don't know if this will help. Here's the abstract definition of a functional state. You define the functional state, the box in the middle there, by giving a big list of all the possible inputs to that state and a big list of all the outputs you get for each input and what state gives way to the central state there for any given input. Okay, so that abstract definition, that's perfectly clear. Yep. And then the idea is the very natural thing that anyone thinks is, well, of course, pain has a functional role like that. If you're in pain, then, well, what is pain? Pain is a state that is brought about by physical injury, that kind of thing. And then you get as output cries for help and so on. If you're in pain, then if you have as input sight of painkiller, then you will get as output taking the painkiller. So it's very. What about the idea that pain has a functional role? Put up your hand if that's perfectly clear. Aha. Okay, then I think the next step is easy. Pain has a functional role. Raise a question if that's not 100% clear. There are characteristic causes and effects of pain, and once you're in the state of pain,